Ruach, 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 Ruach. Not by might or power, but by the Spirit of God. Not by might or power, but by the Spirit of God. Ruach, 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 Ruach. Shalom Mishpacha, which means hello, Mishpah Shali, my family, and all who are listening to this are certainly interested in the family of God. So it's with great delight that I bring you this message of John Wesley's fourth sermon, Scriptural Christianity, on the eve of, in other words, the tail end of Yom Kippur, 5779. Very, very special day. And we'll talk more about that should we have time as we close. So I wanted to say that Wesley in this message is very interesting because he was preaching to the University of Oxford once again. And basically the university had a deal where they would invite people to come back, alumni to come back and preach. And if they couldn't get that person to come back, they had to pay someone else to do it. So they liked the idea of Wesley coming and taking his turn and then not having to pay any money. However, at the conclusion of this message, John Wesley was not welcomed back ever again. They did not mind paying for another preacher, as it were. So let's find out why. So in this message, Wesley is talking about scriptural Christianity. He's wondering where this Christianity exists. He talks first about the person, giving an example after Pentecost or with Pentecost, where the Spirit of God came in to people, by faith, that they received the Spirit and they had the witness of God's Spirit. The love of God was poured in their heart. They became a witness. Like Jesus said, you shall be my witnesses when the Holy Spirit comes upon you. So he believed that, he imagined that this person existed, and then they just gradually spread the message of God's love because they couldn't help but proclaim, to share what it was that they had received. They had been given freely, and they wanted to give freely to all who would hear. Kind of like we're doing here on these wonderful video messages. So he believed that that's how it began, and then it would continue, and then there'd be a number of people that were involved, and they were practicing the fruit of the Holy Spirit. They were living righteousness, peace, and joy. They were doing good works by the power of the Spirit, the works that God had prepared before the foundation of the world for them to walk in. And so they had no desire to do anything wrong or do any harm to anyone. So it was scriptural holiness. It was perfect holiness. And then he would imagine that this would then spread to a whole city and eventually to a country. But his question for the folks at Oxford, and they had no problem with any of the things that he was sharing initially, but he was basically, even though he wasn't saying this is what the Methodist movement has been happening, that's exactly what was happening. Because in the 1700s, at this time, before Wesley was preaching to them on scriptural Christianity, there was a major move of God's Spirit, very similar to the move of God's Spirit in the book of Acts. So all the things that he's sharing with them are things that he's experienced through the movement of the Holy Spirit through the early Methodists. So then he comes to the real clincher, and he says, well, if this is the case, then, if this is scriptural Christianity, where does it now exist? Tell me the city that this Christianity exists in. Tell me the country. Is there a Christian country? Is there a Christian city? And he's basically saying no. They're falling short. And then he's speaking to the folks at the university and saying, does this kind of scriptural Christianity exist even here among us? Those who are teaching others how to spread scriptural holiness across the land. And he concludes by saying no. That they're basically a generation of triflers with God. So this Christianity was not to be found. It was not a part of, it was not present he did not see it demonstrated, that is the fruit of the Holy Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, kindness, patience, long-suffering, gentleness, self-control. The good works of the Holy Spirit. He didn't see those being demonstrated among his peers. And so he basically cuts them to the heart, and they are not too pleased at his conclusions. But I have to say, in all candor, I don't see this kind of Christianity existing in any particular city. Do you? Does scriptural Christianity exist, where we love God with all our heart, mind, and soul and strength, and we love our neighbor as ourself? We don't even think about doing wrong things or wrong things coming out of our mouths. We constantly want to do good for others. We put others above ourselves. Certainly, it doesn't exist in the city of Orlando. It doesn't exist in the state of Florida. But in all fairness, I don't believe that it's meant to exist at this time. Yes, the move of God's Spirit is needed, and it's needed in our generation in a desperate way. But even with a move, like in the book of Acts, like in the early Methodist movement, and where scriptural Christianity is just spreading, not even a need for a police force at times, where there's so much hostility with the religious people against the people of God, that they are destroying their homes, that they're thinking if they destroy them, they're actually serving God. Even with that kind of move of the Spirit, God has set things up before the foundation of the world that we will never have any one city, any one county, any one country that is full of scriptural Christianity, as Wesley described. For that is only coming when the King of righteousness, the King of peace, Yeshua HaMashiach, returns. That's what we're waiting for. So, this very special day of Yom Kippur, it's very significant because, the Jewish people are trying to understand, they were basically saying, okay, if I've done enough good things, then I'm going to be okay for this next year. The high priest is going to go in, and it's like a balance ledger. If there's more good things than bad things, then I'm going to be okay for another year. The blood of the bulls and lambs, goats, will sanctify me as it covers the mercy seat by the high priest when he goes in this day. It's almost like you think about the Santa Claus thing, naughty and nice, looking at the list and seeing who's been naughty and nice. But really, that is not what we're talking about at all in terms of scriptural Christianity. The message that we need to spread is that we have, those who have received the Holy Spirit have the righteousness based on faith. They are walking and living the life and in the power of God's Spirit. And so it is by His Spirit. It's not by works of righteousness or trying to be the best Christian you can be, but it's only as His Spirit comes in. And I hope you have felt that wave of the Spirit as we sang, as I sang earlier in this message. It's the Ruach HaKodesh, the wind of the Spirit. May that wind blow on you this very day. B'Shem Yeshua. Amen.